So I in fact am born and raised in the Toronto area. I grew up in the west end of Toronto and I lived there pretty much for 25 plus years. Now I've seen the highs and lows of the city. I've seen all the major changes over the last quarter century. And unfortunately I have to say most of it has not been for the good. So we're going to talk about that as well. As we go along in this video with each aspect of why I left Canada and why a lot of people other than myself are leaving themselves. So it's going to be, hopefully not too long of a video, but I'm going to get straight to the point. So cost of living. I'll use my example first of all. I lived in a bachelor apartment in the West End, close to High Park. If some of you know Toronto well, it's High Park area. So a little bit more pricier, but my bachelor I was paying just over $1,000. I was working a regular job, 9 to 5, minimum wage, and I had studied, couldn't find anything in my field, as many other people I'm sure have had this problem. So was working this job. I was also doing another side job online, so I was working from home, sort of semi-part-time. So I was making enough money to get by, but think of it this way. If you're making minimum wage, which is now in, I believe, Ontario or Canada, I'm not sure, $16.50, I believe, but don't quote me on it. But at that time, I was making anywhere between $14 and $15 or somewhere around there. So when your wage is not going up and the cost of living continually rises due to inflation, because of reckless spending by the Canadian government, but we won't get too much into that, it's going to cause very, very detrimental harm to especially your mental health, because you're constantly worrying, how am I going to pay my bills? You don't just have your rent, you have high food costs that have gone up in the last 2, 3, almost 4 years, okay, because of inflation. And then you have, hydro continuously going up, high, ridiculously cost cell phone plans. Even just rent itself has gone up, like, I think they said 100 to 200% in the last few years. So like almost doubling the cost. I think my bachelor, since I left, I think the person coming in would be having to pay maybe $1,500 at this point, or $1,400 for a bachelor, because of the area, a lot of different things. And a lot of cases I've heard that it could be a shitty apartment or whatnot, and it's still going to rent out because there's like 20, 30 people in line to get that same dingy place, which, you're always gonna, so that makes it the landlords or whatever not give a shit about, taking care of the place. But anyways, besides that, cost of living is ridiculous. I mean, I can remember that I was always having to work that extra job and have less time for myself. Like, I always think of this way: what the hell is the point of working, and then you have no free time practically, and you're constantly spending your whole life paying bills? I mean, this could be a whole other philosophical type video or whatever, and I maybe have that on another discussion. But I'm just thinking, there's people who are doing 2, 3 jobs sometimes, and they have absolutely no free time for themselves, no time to take care of their errands or whatever. I just can't even think about it. So cost of living is definitely killing people. You can't even pay for your basic needs, much less if you want to go on a vacation or something. Sure, there are people who have good jobs, absolutely, in Canada, in Toronto, whatnot. But I always say this: the very wealthy are doing fine. I mean, if you've got money in Toronto, you're going to have a fine life. It's not going to affect you too much. Even condos. I remember they kept saying that the market's going to crash for condos or housing. They're always saying the housing market crash is going to come, and it never does. So that's probably like one of my top things is why I left Canada, because of the cost of living. It's just become absolutely ridiculous. And it's getting, I think there was a statistic I saw where 1 in 3 Canadians now are having to go to the food bank. Also, a lot of people don't have enough savings in case there's like basically people are living paycheck to paycheck. In case there's an emergency, they don't have that like $400 emergency. There's like basically 60 plus percent of Canadians don't have an emergency fund, which is really kind of scary. The other thing I wanted to mention about the cost of living also, which is very important, is that there are a lot of people who will never be able to afford a house, okay? So, which basically caused a lot of young people in their 20s or whatnot to have to move back with their parents, or they had to get roommates to rent a crappy apartment. So the issue really is also that the housing market has gone skyrocketed. It's gone ridiculous. Like I mentioned about prices and things like that. So houses, it's just really, really unaffordable for the average Canadian, or even someone who just came out of, even someone who just came out of university and has a good job. It's going to take them ages. They're already in debt and things like that. So it's really, really, I don't know, it's just much more difficult to try to buy a house or buy a property in Canada. It really, really is. You couldn't get an outhouse for cheap. So let's go on to the next point. And this is a personal favorite of mine, and I believe one of the biggest reasons for me is the weather, okay? Now, the weather in Canada sucks. I mean, unless you're someone who loves the winter and you do winter sports all year round or whatnot, it's gonna be rough on you, especially on your mental health. I mean, I remember times where there would be hardly anything for me to do. I used to play ice hockey, but I stopped. And then as soon as I did that, and I had to stop basically for some health reasons, whatnot. But as soon as I did that, I was lacking in things to do. I had very few things that I could do. Hangout places, especially during like the last few years. I won't say the word, but when we were all locked away and whatnot, so that it really took a toll, and that kind of made me think I can't deal with this. It was everything happening all at once. The weather was just absolutely terrible. I was still working, so it was kind of like stuck in this loop of freezing weather, go out, and it's like 6+ months of the year, okay? So if you add that up, it's like half your life you're stuck in the cold weather. I'm not bitching by any means, but I'm just simply saying what I went through, and this is just me speaking reality. So I've moved to South America, which basically has wonderful, wonderful weather practically all year round. I can go outside whenever I want. There's just so many benefits for me when it comes to the weather, definitely here in South America, as opposed to Canada. So there are pitfalls that I'll get to about moving to another country, and I'll talk more about that, certain difficulties, but I'll leave that towards the end of the video. So let's move on to the next major topic or major point as to why living in Canada is, or why I left Canada, but why it's also not a great destination these days, especially in 2023. So on to the next point, which is healthcare. Now, I haven't had to use the healthcare system in Canada that often, thankfully, but I would say I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's still one of the best systems social systems that exists in the world. I think it's still better than many other countries in the world. However, there's still quite a few issues to do with the healthcare system. I think for one, we're lacking a lot of doctors, specifically like family doctors. I mean, I was looking for one maybe 3-4 years ago because my previous family doctor retired. So it was really difficult to try and find a new one. It took me like 6 to 8 months to find somebody, but then I wasn't even able to get that person because the pandemic hit. So that screwed things up for me. But the wait list to get a new doctor is very difficult. I would also say that we are not allowing this is tied in with lacking of doctors in Canada. We're not allowing these immigrant doctors coming over to jump into the profession. I think there needs to be a system in place, like some sort of test, rather than having to, go back and take a year or two of university to catch up to the Canadian system. I don't buy that. I think there should be some sort of standard testing where they can, fast track these doctors, because Canada and Toronto specifically, I can't speak for other cities, but I'm imagining it's all over the country, is in dire need of doctors. There's lists, like insane lists, waiting lists for people to get surgeries, to get some sort of specialist. People are having to go to the United States or Asia or wherever else they have to go in order to get a specialist to make sure that they, whether it's for cancer treatment or whatever it may be. It's just ridiculous wait lists in Canada. I would say that's the worst part about it. Sure, you don't pay for many things, but there are still things that you do pay for. And you can find that list on if you live in Ontario, on the Ontario, I forget the medical website or whatever, the Ontario government website, and they have the list of everything that you would have to pay out of pocket. So it's not necessarily everything free. I mean, you still have to pay for certain things. So there's that issue with the healthcare system. I will give you a little story. I injured my foot the last time I was in Canada. Okay, so I still technically had healthcare coverage. I went to the hospital just to make sure my foot was okay. It was just an injury. And on a Sunday, I was actually quite surprised. I was able to get an x-ray, and it only took me, I would say, a good maximum 4 hours waiting. I mean, sure, that seems like a long time, but that's actually not that long of a time in a Toronto hospital to get an x-ray on a Sunday afternoon. Okay, so I would say there's some positives and some negatives when it comes to the healthcare system. Sure, it needs a lot of retooling, and we need more doctors. A lot of people are going to, United States to get better paying jobs. That can go. I could even mention that about the whole brain drain that's going on. A lot of intellectuals, people who have graduated with high honors, are moving to the U.S. because they get paid, and that's in other professions. So Canada needs to try and find a way to secure these people, because otherwise we're going to be lacking not just in doctors, but in all kinds of other fields, and it's just going to keep getting worse. So that's my take on healthcare in Canada. I think it's okay. It has a lot to be desired, but yeah. So there's that. So one of the other reasons, which may not be that big a deal for you, but I would say the food quality is a big thing for me. Like in Canada, I don't find that the food quality is all that great. And what I mean by that is like fresh fruit and seafood and things like that. But hear me out. Seafood, I know Canada has, but it's very pricey, let's be honest. And that goes back to cost of living. Now, where I live, it's fresh fruit everywhere. Certain fruits that you can't even get all year round in Canada. So for me, it was like, wow, I can live healthier and eat cheaper, and all these kind of things. Now, even people I talk to here are always kind of like, oh, why did you leave Canada? Canada's a first world country and this and that. And then when I tell them exactly what I've told you in this video, they realize, oh, really? It's like that, and they don't really believe that it's all that bad. I mean, I know a lot of Brazilians who moved to Canada, and some like it, and then some are kind of questioning it, thinking, should I move? We're thinking if we should move back. In fact, I met somebody on the plane when I was coming back to Brazil who were living in Canada for about a year, and they were still undecided if they want to stay in Canada because they find it's just very, I don't know, has no charm to it. I don't know how to explain it. It's when you've been in another country and you can compare the two, Canada is losing on when it comes to, it just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but when you're walking around Toronto, especially when the weather's crappy or whatever, it's just, you don't feel, it's very depressing. I don't know. It's like no other feeling, especially since I've been back a couple times or whatever, and I'm just like, I made the right decision. In conclusion to this video, I may have more videos about talking about this. There's probably a bunch of other reasons why Canada isn't exactly the best place to go. If you've got a lot of money and you've got a good job, and it might work out for you. But I mean, for me, I could have a ton of money, whatever, but still the weather, the fact that society is not the way it used to be in Canada. I think Canada's lost a lot of the niceties that it used to have, the charm it had before. I will talk about the positives. I didn't forget, but I think it's still, if I compare my life to where I live now in comparison to Canada, it's no question here it's better. I have beaches. For someone who likes beaches and warm weather and more open society, it's the place for me. So the positives, Canada. I would say I like certain foods that they have there. I like the fact that it's very multicultural. I like meeting people from different places. If you can't travel that often out of Canada, you can still meet someone who's possibly from wherever else in the world. So and I had friends from all over the world too. Yeah, so that really is cool to me. I like the fact that for the most part, the system runs well. There's not, in my opinion, there's not that much bureaucracy when it comes to Canada. You can get things done quite easily. It's safer to walk around with your phone, in my opinion. There's certain things that I like about that. I think the nature is wonderful in Canada. I think Canada's a beautiful country. It has nice people. I just see a lot of things going wrong with Canada because of who's running it and things like that. But if I've missed anything, please write in the comments. If you have any questions, write in the comments. This is all off the top of my head, what I could think of why I left Canada. A few of the pitfalls that I would say when it comes to leaving Canada, things that you have to worry about, your healthcare, which I sort of alluded to in this video, where so wherever you move to, depending what you prefer, if you're not going to be in Canada, you have to make sure you have decent healthcare, a plan maybe. You got to figure out your finances. Not everyone can leave Canada on a whim, so that's very difficult. I totally get that. You have to know what your future finances will be, what you're going to need to do, plan your move, where do you want to go, do you need to learn another language, paying your taxes, if you're away from Canada more than 6 months. So there's a lot of different things like that you have to be aware of leaving Canada. You can still vote if you leave Canada. You don't have to renounce your citizenship, obviously. You can maintain your Canadian citizenship, which I highly recommend. I'll never give that up. Passport, you can try to go to a country that has a Canadian consulate, which you can get those services done if you decide to move to another country. I can't think of anything else right now, but I probably will have a follow-up video to this, because I'm sure that a lot of people are going to want to respond and weigh in as well, because I really wanted to weigh in on this topic after seeing so many people posting videos about this over the last couple of years. There's a huge movement, a lot of people leaving Canada, so maybe that's going to be you, maybe not. Yeah, a lot of people say that I abandoned Canada. No, I did this for my own personal thing, my own mental health, better lifestyle for me. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If I missed something, like I said, tell me. I'll respond to you as soon as possible. I'm sure there's going to be more things that are probably a motivator as to why you want to leave Canada. If you're someone who is thinking of moving to Canada, feel free to ask any questions that you want. And once again, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys very soon.